Yes! Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is today. And welcome back. We are rounding out the week. It's been a busy one indeed. Lots of Supreme Court activity, but we're not done yet. We got some more updates to get into. And of course, we're excited about it because today it is a Friday. We made it through another very busy week. And SCOTUS is going to close it out. So as you can see, we've got the latest from the Supreme Court dropped fresh out of the oven today, May 30th, 2025. Very short order from the majority, but we'll go through the dissent because Ketanji and Sotomayor are not happy about it. Wah, wah, wah. But this is interesting because that means Kagan was with the majority. So this is a bipartisan unification in the Supreme Court. What a beautiful experience this is going to be for us today. So we're going to go through it. We're also going to take a look at what the reply said. This was the final reply that came in some time ago from Kristi Noem. Of course, this is the TPS case, temporary protected status, 500,000 people who Joe Biden brought into our country with the stroke of a pen, now getting canceled. Bye. So we'll read through the reply, the final reply that came in from the government, D. John Sauer, and the DOJ. And then that will give us our bearing to understand what the Supreme Court said. Okay, this will be their final word. Then SCOTUS will give us an update. Then we'll see what Stephen Miller had to say about this, because Stephen Miller was on a tear lacing into Cassie, last name Hunt, who was on CNN, and she was not happy with our boy Stephen Miller. So we'll see what he had to say about this, all coming up. Then we will spend time on Backdoor Dugan because Judge Dugan is back in session. This is the judge who tried to escape an illegal alien out of her courtroom, and she is now filing a motion to dismiss, which is very curious. You remember Dugan, this woman right here. She says, I've got judicial immunity because I am a judge. And I guess she's above the law. So this would be curious because we spent a lot of time on presidential immunity here not so long ago. Remember, they told us there was no such thing as presidential immunity. Legislators have immunity. Judges have immunity. Other officials have immunity, but not the president. Remember they said that? Well, now she's saying she has immunity, and we talk about the three buckets: the absolutely protected conduct that the Supreme Court says you can't be prosecuted for. So that's one bucket. There's the one that is presumptive immunity for the president. And then we had the not immune conduct. And the question for Backdoor Dugan is whether or not her conduct falls into one of those protected buckets. So we'll come back. We'll get into that. And then we'll see what you have to say about this. And I hope you've been enjoying our closing song here, our outro Watcher anthem. But we've got another song that was dropped over from our friend Jonah Finn over at WatcherLodge.com. And we'll listen to it at the conclusion of the show today. And so we're excited about that. Thank you, Jonah, for making that for us. I did listen to it, and it's amazing. So we'll go through that. I also want to invite you tomorrow on Saturday. We're going to do a members-only stream in the morning, and then we're going to jump over to Eric's house, ericshouse.org. We have this virtual tour coming up tomorrow. Your boy's going to be hosting it. Mama G's going to be there. Greg's going to be there. Maddie's going to be there. And we're going to be going through hope and healing and explain how grief works, how you can support somebody who's lost somebody, or how you can heal yourself. If you'd like to join us, come join us. It's free. ericshouse.org, and click over there to register. Links are in the description. And we'd love to see you because there's a lot of really good work happening over there. And there's a lot of people that need it. If we can just connect the right people, they don't have to suffer. So that's what Eric's house is doing. And we're excited to have you join us tomorrow. Thanks for joining us. All right, so links in the description below on that one. All right, now, without any further ado, let's get to it. Victory in the Supreme Court again. And one judge in particular is not happy about this. Ketanji, she is dissenting in this after she lost. Kristi Noem. I don't think we got a suck it post from Kristi Noem on this one, but might as well, because what happened here is the TPS status, which Joe Biden granted to about 500,000 people, has now been canceled, or at least stayed for the time being. Remember, Trump came in, said revoked, get out. Then all the lower level judges came back down and said, actually, we're the president. You can't do that because it's going to harm immigrants and all these things. We say, that's great. It's temporary status. they have to go back. It was only supposed to be temporary, and now it's time to go. But Trump couldn't effectuate any of his policies until today. So we'll go through this. Now, the majority decision is very short here. So we're going to pause on this. We'll come back. We'll see what Justice Ketanji had to say about this with Sotomayor. Kagan joining the majority. Welcome aboard, Kagan. Nice to have you. And we'll see what she's so upset about. But I wanted to start with the final reply that came in because, as you know, this starts with an application for a stay. So the government, D. John Sauer, comes out and says, hey, this judge doesn't have the right to stop us from doing this. We're the president, you know, the American people elected us. Hello. And then there's a bunch of additional stuff that gets filed. So America's Future Faith-Based Organization, Immigration Reform Lawsuit, Kristi Noem replied, more briefs, Cato Institute, AFL-CIO unions all filed in. And then we got the order. And you can see it's very short. But let me show you the final reply that came in from Kristi Noem and the DOJ. Solicitor General D. John Sauer. They said, all right, listen. Okay, Supreme Court, you know, these TPS status lovers, they repeatedly acknowledge the significance of the parole revocation decision that they seek to stop in its tracks. Right? In other words, Kristi Noem, President Trump came out, they said, your temporary status, your parole in our country is revoked. The people who are saying that, they say, yeah, we know it's a big deal, but we want to stop it. And in that, they barely address the significant flaws in the lower court's nationwide order that said everybody's stopped everywhere, let alone the irreparable harm to the government of a year-plus delay in implementing a decision that Homeland has deemed time-sensitive and critically important. Now, they turn around the TPS lovers and they dismiss those harms as only abstract and generic. They say, well, so what if we got 500,000 people here? You can let them stay here for another 2 years. It's not a big deal to you if they've already broken into your home. In this case, they didn't. I mean, it's hard to call them illegal or anything like that because Joe Biden said, oh, you're not illegal anymore. Just come on in. But there is nothing abstract or generic about artificially extending the continued presence in this country of up to 532,000 aliens who may not be here illegally because Joe Biden kind of broke the law to let them in. But they are aliens. They're not citizens. They don't have any permanent status here. So it's time to go. It's called temporary protected status. They have not demonstrated admissibility. They don't have claims for asylum, claims against torture, or any of those things. When the executive branch is constitutionally and statutorily charged with managing the immigration systems, right? It's our job. The president and the executive handle immigration. Congress codified that a long time before President Trump even came into the political field. And we have determined that here there is a national interest, and the judge doesn't get to substitute their judgment for that. They're unelected. This court often intervenes when lower courts usurp the executive's control, and that's what you should do here, Supreme Court, and of course they did. So beginning with the merits, they say the INA, the Immigration and Nationality Act, could not even be clear, okay? It says, quote, verbatim, here, no court shall have jurisdiction to review any decision the authority for which the INA specifies is in the discretion of Homeland Security. So if the law gives it to Homeland, it is Homeland's. You don't get to be a judge who says, actually, I'm Homeland now. The granting and terminating of parole are precisely those discretionary authorities. The INA says the Secretary, Christie, may grant parole to an alien applying for admission in her discretion. Probably says his in the statute, but she's a she. And terminates that parole when, in her opinion, it's right there, 8 U.S. Code 1182 D5A. These judges should read it. In his or her opinion, canceled. Nevertheless, the district court judge purported to exercise jurisdiction over Kristi Noem's termination, said actually, for certain aliens, the people who came from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, like those illegal Venezuelans who killed that young girl, Ava, in Texas. Echoed by respondents. They say that review bar is inapplicable if the court finds the secretary exercised her authority in an unlawful manner. So he says, well, court said, well, you're right. I can't make a determination on her decision, but I'm not. I'm just going to say she's using the law illegally. We say, what? That's kind of questioning her decision. No, not the decision about whether to cancel. It's how she's canceling. Okay, so the effect is she can't do it. Under that rationale, a court would exercise jurisdiction whenever it finds the challenged action to be unlawful. That's the whole point of a review bar, right? That's the whole point. You can't just like find another reason. It says it's non-reviewable, so you can't review it. They have no answer for this because there isn't one. Now, in addition, respondents' entire case, the illegals, they both on reviewability and on the merits, hinges on their contention that the secretary may terminate parole only on a case-by-case basis, right? So that's their backup argument. Well, she did it too quickly. She did it too aggressively. It's going to go after too many people. They all have pupusa businesses in America. Now they're going to be in trouble with pupusas in Guatemala. So, but the plain text says that case by case, that applies only to the granting of parole, which Joe Biden didn't do. It doesn't go to the termination of it. Respondents all but ignore the text, other than to observe that the statute does not use the terms grant or terminate. And they say that's a non sequitur, it doesn't even follow. Respondents also say that Christie did not terminate the parole. They're saying, well, actually, she didn't really terminate it. She's like, yeah, I did. I signed it. They say, no, she actually just modified a condition of it, which is the termination date, because it was already granted and she just extended it, brought it forward. Now, that is textually untenable and at odds with their own reference elsewhere to the mass revocation of parole, which they said in other filings. So their arguments are changing. Like, wait a minute. You're saying she didn't really terminate it? When you were screeching months ago, you said that she was mass revoking everything. So which is it? Now, regardless of whatever they're just making up for their current filings, even with when the law calls for individualized determinations, agencies can use categorical criteria. And that's what the secretary did here anyways. So she did. They're all individual. Say, where'd you all come from? Venezuela? Great. Everybody from Venezuela. You all had an assessment. You're all from Venezuela. We've categorically said Venezuela, it's fine. Go back down there to Maduro land and have a great time down there. But we don't have room for you here. So thanks for coming. Now, actually not. Thank you for leaving. Now, the secretary did terminate parole using those same features, but they all got an individualized assessment. Like, you're from Venezuela? Okay, great. So you're going home. Great. Pack your bags. Respondents have no answer to that point either. Now, instead, the illegal lovers' principal argument is that they will suffer irreparable harm. They say, oh no, if you allow Trump to cancel the status of 500,000 people, he says, wait, because they have not acquired some other lawful immigration status. And if you cancel it, they must either leave the country or they're going to end up in removal proceedings. So either one, they got to go or we'll remove them. They say that's going to be a big deal. And I'll concede that. Yeah, 500,000 people's a lot of people. It's like an entire state in our country called Wyoming. That's why they have to go, because we cannot be importing foreigners to the equivalent of a state like Wyoming. It's not sound policy. It's lunacy. So they have to go. Now, if they were concerned about that, then they should have come, because it's called temporary protected status. So don't treat them like they're morons either. Or I think that's actually what they think. Like, they think that immigrants are just like dumb cattle. I'm not saying that. They think that. And they say, we have to take care of these people, these bleeding heart liberals. We have to take care of them. What are they going to do? They're all going to die unless we act and do something. And it's not our responsibility, quite frankly. So here, the prior administration granted respondents 2-year terms, right? It's their responsibility. They came temporarily. They left their homeland. They can go back and they can manage their lives just like the rest of us have to do. Now, but the prior administration granted respondents 2-year terms of parole with the explicit caveat that the parole was temporary. You knew it. It was discretionary and it was revocable at any time. So don't tell us that suddenly we're pulling the rug out from all these people. Oh no, it was always temporary. So quit your crying, Ketanji, about how devastating it's going to be to their lives. It was temporary always. Foreclosing their claims of harm. They knew it was temporary. So if there's any sort of like reliance interest that they're going to be claiming, like, wow, we came here, we started a business and all these things. Okay, that's great. Thanks for doing that or for your life. But it's not going to be permanent. Now, respondents underscore their own lack of irreparable harm. They say the district court's order does not prohibit the government from terminating any member's parole or initiating removal proceedings. Yeah. Now, that concession underscores that the district court's order does not actually protect any substantive entitlement. Like, that's what we're asking. What is the reliance interest, right? There's this idea that if the government gives you something, they can't just take it away if you're relying on it. I mean, that might make sense. So like the government's like, oh, here, this is your land now, and you can just build on it or whatever. Like, actually, it's our land now. You're like, what? You got a reliance interest because it was handed to you. Now, these are illegals who are not citizens who had their status revoked. So not technically illegal, but you get the point. They're not citizens. They're aliens. And they're about to be illegal if they don't go. So that order, as of today, now that order instead serves only to throw a wrench into the government's efforts to enforce the immigration laws by confining the government to the gargantuan task of prosecuting 532,000 aliens individually. And that number should just basically disgust everybody. It's a state of people that were flown into our country by the last lunatic administration. A state. The elections are managed by like 50,000 votes in some places. 100,000 votes is dispositive of the entire election. They brought in 500,000 people, and a handful of them are voting in the election. So we know what's going on. Now, Kristi Noem and the DOJ responded to this before the Supreme Court came back out. They say, the INA, the law, not Trump's proclamation, not some executive order, the INA, which was passed by Congress and has been in existence forever, review bar states that with exceptions that are not relevant here, it says this specifically. No court shall have jurisdiction to review this. One more time. No court shall have jurisdiction to review any other decision or action of the secretary where discretion is specified. That's here. The exercise of parole authority plainly is discretionary and it is not reviewable. Now, they don't even dispute that the INA specifies that parole determinations are in the discretion of the secretary. They agree. Instead, though, like the district court, they deemed the review bar inapplicable because she didn't abide by the non-discretionary limits on her authority, which is she's got to go one at a time and say, can I remove you back? In other words, give them all hearings and removal proceedings when the basis of their admission was already temporary. They agreed to come in temporarily. Now they get a bunch of rights to hearings and proceedings and a bunch of due process when they've already agreed it was temporary? No. They knew what they were doing. They don't get to suddenly change their arguments and then say there's a basis to be here forever just because they want to be. They agreed to the terms. They don't get to break the contract, and the courts don't get to modify the contracts just because it's convenient and it's upsetting to them that a bunch of people are going to have to leave. Setting aside that no such case-by-case limitation even exists, it's not required for her to do that at all, it would eviscerate the bar. Under that view, courts would always review the merits of the secretary's discretion to determine whether I can look at it or not. The bar would apply only where the judge says, okay, she did it. It was lawful, right? It's going to be one and the same. If it's lawful, then I can't review it. If it's unlawful, then suddenly I can review it, which is what's happening here. A bar that precludes review only if the court says it's allowed is not a bar at all. Like the bar has to have some teeth to this. And the proposition that jurisdiction should depend on a court's view of the merits is like an exercise of hypothetical jurisdiction that these courts are not allowed to do. And they have no answers to this. They just say, well, 500,000 people, and we're real sad about it. Now, they invoke on the presumption of judicial review, but that presumption can be overcome by the statute, right? So like judicial review is the concept that the courts get to say what the law is. Yeah, but Congress also sets the jurisdiction of the courts and says what claims go where. And they have said specifically, the courts are barred from decisions like this that are handed to the executive to prevent this from happening specifically. Here, Congress wrote, no court shall have jurisdiction to review. They wrote it. It's about as specific as it gets, okay? They wrote that. Even the INA makes clear that review is precluded where the statute makes it discretionary, and that's what is happening here. They appear to agree where she makes an individual decision, then that would not be reviewable, right? They say, well, if Christie goes through and just makes every one of these 500,000 people the equivalent of an entire state, then she can get rid of them. Now, left unexplained is why this decision would become reviewable if it's made alongside 531,999 other people. How come that's different, though? Like, what is your basis for that? So if she can do it for one, why can't she do it for all? Like, show us in the law. Under their logic, had Kristi Noem issued 532,000 separate notices terminating each alien's parole with no explanation whatsoever, that would be reviewable, according to their rules. Maybe she'll do that next. Yet some same determinations somehow become reviewable under their view because they got combined. But there's nothing in the law that says that at all. Instead, they rely on some other cases that are not applicable. And then they turn around and try to latch onto this with other claims. Then they say, well, it's not really about judicial review and whether she's executing the law appropriately. Now we can also file other claims under the APA. This is ridiculous. The APA doesn't give you judicial review either. You can't use some other provision to suddenly invalidate the law. It says no other court. That means the other claims. It precludes judicial review when an agency has already explained it's discretionary. Now, both of those apply here, and they have no answer to this. They seem to agree that individual paroles can be terminated, but they just say, well, this is really going to be a big problem because it's going out to like our entire voter base. But everything we've done here, says Trump before the Supreme Court got this, is lawful, and we're going to win. Their arguments on reviewability say that we have to go case by case, but that is just plainly incorrect. The law doesn't say that at all. It says case by case for granting it. On the way in, someone should have looked at him and said, do you really need to be here? Are you really in danger? Did you really need temporary protected status here? Or are you just coming here as part of the invasionary force? Which one is it? They didn't do that. Joe Biden said, come on in, get on an app, Uber illegal into America. Come on in. It contains no parallel requirement for the termination. On the way in, you should look at it. On the way out, you don't have to. And they did the opposite of that, right? They're trying to invert the law. Now, respondents never address that distinction because it's devastating to their case. But that difference in the language should be given effect because, Congress wrote it. Now, they say, well, the statute doesn't say grant or terminate, but they say that doesn't matter. It's the meanings. The INA provides the secretary may in her discretion parole. Okay, so it's parole. It's not grant or terminate. She paroled and then unparoled, granted and then revoked. Now, the italicized parole is an active verb. And it's like, okay, you want to mince words about it? It's cancellation of the parole. So then, since they're playing word games, then they try to argue, well, she didn't actually terminate parole, but she just changed the conditions of it, and they get very squirrely there. But the mere fact that the statute is phrased in the singular doesn't, like parole, like such parole of such alien, doesn't mean that it's a singular statute. Respondents observe, they say, well, context is key. And they say, hello, yeah, read it in context. It's in our favor. As longstanding regulations confirm, the secretary may employ categorical criteria in making parole determinations. You can look at the Code of Federal Regulations right there. Nor do the TPS lovers address the problem that their incorrect reading of the statute would say that Congress insertion of the case-by-case language, it would be meaningless. And we're not supposed to make things that Congress wrote meaningless because that's the law. Courts should require language to have effect. Now, even if the statute imposed a case-by-case requirement, we did it. Even where Congress says, okay, make individualized determinations, we can do that. Why? Because the categorical criteria here, oh, okay, your Venezuela, your emergency, whatever the justification was from Biden is now over. You can go home, and you all have already been in the systems in these correct categories, so your cases have already been reviewed individually. We don't need to review you again individually to say, are you really from Venezuela? We already know that. Indeed, it would be strange to fault the secretary for terminating parole by applying categorical factors when literally Mayorkas Alejandro granted parole by applying categorical factors. It said case by case on the way in. He didn't do that. He said, just get online, get on an app. We'll pay for it. Come on in. because you're in danger. Says respondents, the TPS people, say that Nome recognized that potentially eligible beneficiaries were adjudicated on a case-by-case basis, but that's missing the point. To receive parole, they did have to satisfy both the categorical criteria from Mayorkas and individualized criteria, because that's what the law said. A failure to satisfy either would have resulted in a denial of parole. So Nome and her determination to say, well, the criteria no longer justifies their parole is valid the opposite way. Now, these situations are common. Happens a lot. A lack of detention capacity, or the fact that there is people who might be a danger to the community. We categorically treat people in categories all the time. But once a new detention facility becomes available, the purposes of parole would have been served for all the aliens who were then paroled because of a lack of detention capacity. So, okay, we can't hold them anymore, so now we got to do something. This is why it was ordered to be granted by Congress on a case-by-case basis, but to permit parole to be terminated on a categorical basis. It would be pointless and illogical to require the secretary to additionally and redundantly make a case-by-case determination before terminating them on the way out. Like they already had their determination on the way in and agreed it was temporary. Now it's canceled. Now you go. You don't get to come file a bunch of additional claims here. You already knew it was temporary. In all events, given that the secretary will continue to exercise her decision on a case-by-case basis in the categories, her rejection of the categorical criteria does not violate their incorrect reading of the statute. And like the judge below, none of this is arbitrary and capricious. They say, how dare you do this to 530,000 people? They say she acted arbitrarily in terminating this. But we observe that the law says Homeland may subject a non-citizen to expedited removal only if that person has not been admitted or paroled. And they say, well, that is just in the past. So it's like if you were once paroled, then you still can't have removal proceedings, is what their argument is. That's obviously incorrect. As a purely grammatical and linguistic matter that they don't understand, apparently, of course, the present perfect tense could refer either to a single past event or to a continuing status. So it's like, well, if they ever had parole, then you can't remove them. And they say, that's not what it says. It says if they don't have parole, then they can be removed. And that's at the current time, not anything in the past. Respondents say that parole is paired with admission, and so we're now talking about text and grammar. But the INA lacks any provision about this. Those regulations say after parole is terminated, get out. Now, this court, the Supreme Court, is likely going to grant a review. And of course, they've already granted the stay, so we'll skip that. But here is what they say in terms of the equitable factors. Okay, and this is when we talk about equitable factors, we're kind of balancing the harms. Think about it that way, like a little balancing scale. Well, what happens if we do this? It's going to go this way. What happens if we go this way? So we're going to deport 500,000 people. It's going to be a big deal. I think it is going to be a big deal. That's the point. That's why we elected Trump. We've got 20 million more to go. So it's a lot, right? And that's the point. So we understand that. Now, as a society, we have sat here for the last 4 years, been invaded. And you might have some empathy for some of these people because they got exploited by our own government, right? They got duped in here by Joe Biden and the Democrats saying, come on in here. It's going to be like Disneyland for the rest of your life. No, that's no way to run a country. So the illegals shouldn't be mad at Trump or the Republicans. They should be mad at the Democrats for duping them, ensnaring them to get up out of their homes, break into our country, try to make an illegal life here and promise them that something would change. It's obviously not a way to run a country. So they should be the ones who are held responsible for this. We're trying to get our country back in order. So then they'll say, well, it's going to be harmful to them and that's going to impact your economy. And what if all the pupusa factories go out of business? We're all going to die, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so balancing the factors. Now, the district court's order imposes irreparable harm on us, the government. Now, and the people whose interests merge here. Okay, they're one and the same. The Constitution and the INA grant the Secretary, Kristi Noem, and the political branches, not the courts, the task of deciding whether it is in the public interest to allow 532,000 aliens who were never admitted or inspected to remain in the country. I don't think it's in our interest to have 530,000 foreigners from foreign countries floating around our country in a temporary status on the road to be permanent citizens, or whatever they want to categorize them as. We are tired of the invasion. And the secretary discharged that responsibility at length, explaining why the CHNV parole programs and the specific foreign policy approach that justified the creation of those programs are antithetical to our foreign policy. Now, they say, those aren't really harms. So what, Rob? If you have your country invaded by everybody else around the world, and if your people are not seeing their wages increase, not seeing the ability to buy homes, not seeing the ability to find good jobs, having our life expectancy dump in the toilet, and life goes on, but it's just deal with it, because we have a responsibility to care for everybody on the planet while our country's being hollowed out. No, they call those harms abstract and generic, because to them, the illegals who are non-citizens are more important than you. Now, they ignore the concrete specific harms that result from forcing the executive branch to tolerate the presence of 532,000 aliens whom the secretary has determined should not remain in the country. Now, as Christie explained, any delay in terminating these parole programs would undermine our ability to conduct foreign policy, shift government policies, and impede time-sensitive negotiations. And beyond that, the executive branch suffers harm when the district courts intrude on the core executive functions, which is what's happening here. Now, they then try to turn this around and say, well, the district court's order is very narrow. It says it doesn't prohibit the secretary from terminating or truncating the class member's parole. Remember, they all got class status too, because they're better than us. Or prevent the federal government from terminating the parole of any individual beneficiary. But they said there's no practical way for the government to proceed individually. You want us to have hearings for 500,000 people in a reasonable time frame? No. And at least of all, because the effect of such delays might well require a greater proportion of this population to be placed in ordinary rather than expedited removal proceedings, which is straining the system already. Put simply, the order is inimical to the government and to the public's strong interest in removing these people now. Now, on the flip side, a stay of the lower court order is not going to cognizably harm the respondents or the absent class members. As Mayorkas repeated when establishing these very parole programs, he told them, parole is a discretionary benefit that can be terminated at any time. He wrote it. He said, quote, DHS may terminate parole in its discretion at any time. They were on notice. The fact that they didn't believe it, the fact that they didn't care, the fact that they thought this was going to be Disneyland in America for the rest of their lives is their problem, not ours. Respondents contend that a stay, and they should be mad at Mayorkas for duping them and promising them something differently. Obviously, we're not going to have 500,000 people come in here and just plop down. Respondents contend that a stay of the district court's order would put many beneficiaries immediately at risk of deportation without normal due process protections. It's like they came in under an agreement that they would leave at any time. And now they want due process about that? That is incorrect. As the government has explained, parolees who lack 2 years of continuous presence and cannot establish admissibility likely would be placed in expedited removal anyways, which comport with the Constitution and the Due Process Clause. Now, they assert that they may be removed to countries where they're going to face risks of danger and persecution and even death, which we've seen because and the things we've seen on this is like ridiculous. We haven't seen anything credible here ever on any of these as far as we've covered these cases. We have seen Kilmar's filed claims talking about his mama's pupuseria business under attack by competing gang members or something like that. Totally ridiculous. The other dude, the DVD dude or the OCG dude, is a gay man who gets weird looks as he goes to the grocery store. Okay, you guys got to deal with that. Okay, deal with your own papusa attacks. Deal with your own weird looks. Don't bother us with it. But any alien placed in expedited removal proceedings could raise claims under the Convention Against Torture or other withholding of removal protections if they think they have those. But fundamentally, their repeated assertions that the order does not prevent the government from terminating parole underscores that they are not protecting any substantive entitlements. They don't have any rights to be here, period. They came here temporarily. Instead, the order simply serves to stymie the government's efforts to enforce the laws that they already agreed to, and that is not a harm. They can't claim harm for doing what they said that they would do, much less one that outweighs the government's strong foreign policy interest in implementing the discretionary judgments that Congress entrusted to Homeland. Banger filing right there. D. John Sauer, Solicitor General, coming in to the Supreme Court. And that was effective because the Supreme Court came back down and Trump wins on this one. From the Supreme Court, a very short order, 7-2. They write in the Kristi Noem case, TPS status is canceled again. Says the application for a stay, Trump said, okay, Supreme Court, can you stop that, lower judge? He said, we can't cancel this. Can you stop him from canceling our cancellation? Referred to the court through Justice Jackson is hereby granted. Victory. The April 15th order that was coming from Massachusetts is now stayed pending the disposition of the appeal in the First Circuit and the disposition in this court if it is sought. So, if the First Circuit gives a bad ruling, the next party will take it up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court can decide what to do with it. If they deny that, then that means they're happy with the First Circuit Court of Appeals, and that can stay. If they're unhappy, if it is granted, then the stay will be in place until the Supreme Court decides. So, as it stands, TPS status is now canceled again. And so Trump is victorious. The American people are victorious. The idea that we have to just have 500,000 people get Ubered into our country and stay indefinitely is not in alignment with the law. And the Supreme Court found accordingly. Now, this was 7-2. You can see we've got two people dissenting down here. We got Justice Jackson, with whom Sotomayor dissents. Let's see what they are crying about. Now, we notice that Kagan is going to be up in here. So shout out to Amy Coney Barrett. Thank you to John Roberts for coming out on the right side on this. And thank you, Kagan, for also eschewing your liberal ladies and joining the right side of the law. So here is what Ketanji had to say. You know, when this court evaluates whether or not to stay, the factors we apply are well established. Okay, all right, so she's going to make it a procedural objection. You know, normally we are a lot stricter before we accept stays or not. In any given case, each of these considerations talks about the appropriateness of what we should do. So basically, the Supreme Court internal procedure wasn't rigorous enough in granting this. Here's what Ketanji says. Oh, Ketanji's big bad. She says, the court has plainly botched this assessment today. Oh no, Ketanji. It requires next to nothing from the government with respect to irreparable harm. And it undervalues the devastating consequences of allowing the government to precipitously upend the lives and livelihoods of nearly 500,000 non-citizens while their legal claims are pending. Yeah, they are non-citizens. They're aliens here from a foreign country. And it's interesting. It's like she really cares so much about their lives and I guess is not so concerned about the upending of their lives temporarily to come here. They were willing to do that. They changed everything, left everything behind to come here temporarily, agreed to it. Now they can go back. So they're like, in other words, they're used to it. And it's not devastating if they knew it was coming or should have known. And they should have known because Trump didn't just come up with this idea like yesterday. Kind of been running on this issue for a long time. So if you're here on TPS status and it's December 2024, and you just saw what happened in November, and you're not packing your bags, well, that's on you, bro. Now, even if the government is likely to win on the merits, in our legal system, success takes time, says Ketanji, and the stay standards require more than anticipated victory. She's like, I just want to buy him some more time. Ketanji says, I would have denied the government's application because its harm-related showing is patently insufficient, right? She says, it's not a harm to you, America. It's not a harm to you, government, to have a 500,000 people, an entire state, literally Wyoming. It's like 550,000 people in Wyoming. Beautiful state. The balance of the, what are we supposed to do? Just absorb them? Now, the balance of the equities also weighs heavily in the respondent's favor, says Ketanji, in favor of the TPS people. While it's apparent the government seeks a stay to enable it to inflict maximum pre-decision damage, she's mad. Maximum damage. Court-ordered stays exist to minimize the harms. All right, so I want to just see how upset she is. So just allow us to indulge because she seems mad. It's great. Nearly 500,000 Cuban, Nicaraguan, Haitian, and Venezuelan non-citizens have invaded our country. On January, Trump said, get out. And they sued. They have a putative class action. They got pseudonyms. They got everything they wanted. They got ACLU lawyers and more. She says this decision does not reflect a back-of-the-napkin assessment. She says the dilemma is pretty serious and there's going to be irreparable harm. I want to get to the harm part. I want to see what she's so upset about. Notably, about stays, the bottom line is this. Our decision to issue a stay involves much more than merely forecasting. We also have to talk about the harms. Here we go. The government plainly failed to satisfy the harm, saying having 550,000 people is not a big deal to us. Just shove it, eat it, just deal with it. I'm Ketanji. Homeland contends that the district court's order prevents it from doing its job as a general matter. But it doesn't establish an urgent need to get rid of these people now, right, Ketanji? Now? Why are you doing it now? Because we got a lot of people to get out. We're not wasting any time. Before the courts can determine whether an action is lawful. So she just wants more time, right? So just drag your heels, put some speed bumps in the process and whatever. Now, for instance, she said the agency doesn't identify any specific national security threat. It's like, well, there's no, like, they're not going to like blow up Washington or something. So they can stay. If they're not going to commit 9/11, then they can stay. So yeah. And there's also no specific foreign policy program that Ketanji's happy about. And they can also do it on a case-by-case basis. And so there's no harm to them. They should wait. The government should wait. They've already been here long enough, so why not wait? But now they're going to have all this harm. So this is where liberals just go bananas, right? And Stephen Breyer, a former Supreme Court judge, wrote a book on Supreme Court analysis where he didn't really care about textualism or originalism or any of these concepts. So what does the law say? They just call it, he literally called, his book is like called something, Why Pragmatism is Better. Their judicial interpretation is called pragmatism. It's this idea of like a living, breathing constitution, and whatever's happening around you, you as a judge you have a right to come in here and correct the balance, which is what we're seeing in all these injunctions. Judges aren't saying, can Trump make that argument under the law? Can he fit it in there even if I don't agree? Like, if we give him the maximum benefit of the doubt, is it in compliance with the law? It is? Okay, he can do it. I hate it, but he can do it because that's how the law works. That's what the law says. And instead, they say, well, it's too much tariffs. It's too much deportations. It's too much. And the law doesn't allow you to. And no, they're putting artificial upper limiters on there or just saying it's a due process problem or whatever. But then they turn around. And as we were talking about the balance of the equities, then Ketanji is going to just unload. Check this out. This is going to be great. Respondents have shown that imminent and significant harm is going to befall them if 500,000 people have to go. A stay would immediately effectuate. Yeah, this is what they did. The Supreme Court just granted this stay. So like this is a checkbox. Okay, so all this is going to happen according to Ketanji. Incredible. What's going to happen right now? En masse truncation of all parole grants for 500,000 people. Many parole recipients arrived here at the invitation of the U.S. government, yeah, which was scandalous and treasonous. That's my point, right? The illegals shouldn't be mad at Trump. Or Republicans. We want to take our country back. Quite frankly, the illegals should want to take their countries back too. They should go back down there and make it so that it's not a terroristic hellhole that they want to flee. So the government brought them in and basically set them up, rug pulled them, by promising them something that was never deliverable unless the laws were broken. So because their home countries were afflicted by strife, which again, I'm sorry it's afflicted with strife, but do you know what we have in America? Strife. We all have strife every single day. Lots of strife that we all go through. Doesn't mean we get to break the law and go to a better, go to a country that we deem better for us automatically, and then have judges lecture us about accepting them. Or they're subject to unsafe living or working conditions. Yeah, we got that too. Now, parolees have sponsors here, and in many cases, they've already integrated into American neighborhoods. That's the point. And communities in hopes of eventually securing long-term legal status or asylum, which was the game plan that we're canceling. No one disputes that social and economic chaos will ensue if that many non-citizen paroles are suddenly and summarily remanded. Well, I mean, I think that there will be probably some economic chaos, probably for the 500,000 people and their businesses and all of those things. I would imagine there will be some. I'll grant that. But the invasion of our country to the tune of 20 million people, or 10, pick a number, I don't care, is causing economic chaos in our country, Ketanji. So you have to pick one. You have to pick an option. Which road? Do you want to have a country that has a border and a functional citizenry with sound economics where we can have real jobs and not hollow out our industry? Or do we want to be this globalistic world where everybody can come in from all over the place for whatever reason because they're experiencing strife on the way to the grocery store? There are consequences to this, Ketanji. Just because you don't care about them because you're in Washington, D.C. and you don't have to see it, doesn't mean it's not real. So now they say the respondents, the temporary aliens who always knew they were temporary, they now face two unbearable options. On the one hand, they could leave the United States. That would be great. And then they would confront dangers in their native countries. Or they could experience family separation. Or they could forfeit any opportunity to obtain a remedy based on their other claims. Well, you know, they're adult people. They're humans. They got functional brains in their heads. So how come they couldn't come to these, conclusions when they were here temporarily? Like if you go to a student visa, like you're going to go get a visa to Oxford or something, like, unless you plan and have a plan to stay forever and the law allows that, it's temporary. Everybody knows that. So it was the same thing here. And now all of these consequences for something that was from the very beginning temporary. On the other hand, they could remain in the United States after parole, or they could risk imminent removal. Government agents are going to come round them up, along with serious attendant consequences from that. Saying, yeah, even confirming, yeah, if you don't leave, respondents may be subject to arrest and detention and will no longer be authorized to work here legally in this country either, and will lose opportunity to seek any adjustment of status. It's all canceled. Yes, that's the point. We won the election. All canceled. The opposite of what Joe Biden did. Now, either choice creates significant problems for them. And it's not enough harm to the government. Both options might deprive this court of jurisdiction, and so we should grant a stay. Because if we do, granting the stay would facilitate needless human suffering before the courts. And I guess Venezuelans who are here illegally killing American citizens like Eva from Texas, who is a U.S. Air Force cadet, that's not really human suffering to them. So our totally open, wide open system that was enabled by Joe Biden can allow to persist even after they got obliterated in the election. Saying this is going to have high stakes, says Ketanji, real harm to people. One might reasonably expect the government to step up to equity's scale with a mountain of harm-related arguments bolstered by evidence. But the government is not showing why anyone's going to be harmed and why we need this policy now. Well, we need it now because the delay is the entire strategy. The lawfulness of this agency action is being litigated. We've denied other stay requests before, and the government is not giving us enough here, saying, and I guess she says, somehow the court has now apparently determined that the equity balance weighs in the government's favor. And I suppose, says Ketanji, that it is in the public's interest to have the lives of 500,000 aliens unravel all around us before the court decides their legal claims. She supposes. Yeah, I think they didn't phrase it as kind of like a hysterical person. 500,000 migrants unravel all around us. Even assuming a likelihood that the law permits the government to terminate this, I will let the courts decide the highly consequential legal issue first, but allowing the government to do what it's doing now is unleashing devastation in the process. All right, yeah, well, the illegals have devastated our country, and the politicians who enabled it have done the same. And now we reverse the course of power here, and we're fixing what they've done to us. So that was quite enjoyable. Ketanji was roaring mad because they care about illegals more than their own country. Now, we have Stephen Miller not playing around. Stephen Miller went on to CNN and spoke with Cassie, last name Hunt, and here is what he said during this very enjoyable obliteration.
Last few weeks, yet even just yesterday we saw whenever a judge rules against this administration, you say they're going rogue. Do you think a judge should just rubber stamp what your White House does? If not, what checks and balances do you think should be in place for this White House?
It's not the job of a district court judge to perform an individual green light or red light on every single policy that the president takes as the head of the executive branch. Just think about the premise baked into your question, respectfully, Pam. You're saying that when the American people elect a president of the United States of America,
I'm not saying
well, it's the implication, who is the sole head of the executive branch. Well, let me finish. I will answer the question happily. But look, when you have these kinds of lazy assumptions built into questions, it makes it hard to have a constructive dialogue.
What is a lazy assumption? I said you all had to win.
You said no. You said is it my expectation?
I'm speaking because now you're putting.
You said is it my expectation? It's not just you. It's the whole media. In other words, when you
I know
hear
you
a
want
sentence
to
like
it is a completely fair question. You say judges who rule against the White House
and I will
go rogue.
gladly answer it. When you say, do we think district court judges should rubber stamp each action? There is a premise that is built into that is absurd. The president is the sole head of the executive branch. He's the only officer in the entire government that's elected by the entire American people. Democracy cannot function. In fact, democracy does not exist at all if each action the president takes, foreign policy, diplomatic, military, national security, has to be individually approved by 700 district court judges. That's democracy?
No,
so if there's
it's not.
15 communist crazy judges on the court, that each of them as a team working together can block and freeze each and every executive action. Joe Biden was allowed by that same court system
Some of them
to
are
import
Trump
20
judges,
million
though.
illegal foreigners.
Why did Trump put these crazy communist judges, as you call them, on the bench?
You heard President Trump himself say that the Federal Society and Leonard Leo has created a broken system for judicial vetting. And God knows this time around, we are not going to be using...
So does that mean he doesn't support picking Amy Coney Barrett for the Supreme Court?
What it means is simply this and nothing more. We're not going to be using the Federal Society to make judicial nominations at all going forward. But
yes, and my apologies, notice of errata on that. I thought that was Kay, last name Hunt, but it's not. I guess it's Pam somebody from CNN. They all kind of look and sound the same, so sometimes I get confused. But Stephen Miller is exactly right. These judges are instituting a judicial coup, and thankfully the Supreme Court on this case has come out and said status is canceled. All right, so that was a good one. Now, we got to talk about this backdoor judge again. Oh, gosh, here we are. Backdoor Dugan trying to find a backdoor out of her criminal charges. You can see that her defense team submitted this motion to dismiss her case. And if you are unfamiliar with this woman, this is her. She was put on temporary leave. She's a Wisconsin judge charged with 2 counts, obstruction of justice, concealing to prevent the arrest, And that's because she took this illegal alien out her back door, right in her courtroom. She got criminally charged, and this guy was also charged with 3 counts of battery for beating the hell out of people. They were sitting in the courtroom, and she's hired a ton of lawyers like this dude who are coming in, the LeBron James of lawyers, trying to get her out of trouble. She's been charged in the Eastern District of Wisconsin, and now she's trying to escape criminal liability. Now let's go through her motion to dismiss and analyze this puppy, because we know that the immunity issue is going to come up because the liberals say that they are above the law for everything they do, but everyone else is not. And we've already seen, we know that there is judicial immunity. We know cops have qualified immunity. We know Congress people have legislative immunity. We didn't know much about presidential immunity. They told us that there was no such thing until the Supreme Court said, oh, yeah, there is. Obviously, idiots, which is something we have been screaming about forever. There's clearly immunity. But then the Supreme Court gave us 3 buckets. And so we'll use this as a framework. Let's draw these out because we're going to analyze Dugan's claims according to these 3 buckets. So we'll just draw these out. Remember, the Supreme Court said, look, when we're asking whether there is immunity, we have to ask what bucket it goes in. The first bucket, we're going to say that the strongest constitutional protections go this way. So immunity is stronger going this direction on your screen to the right. You can have complete, and we'll call this absolute immunity, if the Constitution, if the laws, if the rules say you can do that thing explicitly. Okay, so if the law says somewhere that Dugan can sneak aliens out her back door somewhere, she's going to come into this bucket. We're unlikely to see that, I think. Now, we also have this other bucket. It was called the presumptive bucket. If the person, in this case, this applies to the president, but I think we'll probably see a similar kind of distinction on a lot of this in this case. Presumptive would mean if it may not be concrete, like explicit, saying that you can do this. It's not codified, written deliberately in the Constitution. So it's maybe not absolute, but it might be presumptive if it's within the outer perimeters. Okay, so if you can make an arguable point saying, actually, my power is within this little, bucket. Like this is clearly constitutional. This is my outer perimeter of power. Then I'll be protected. I'll have a presumption of immunity, and then you can rebut that immunity. Say, actually, we think your action was out here. It was outside the outer perimeter, and so therefore, you fall into this bucket, which is no immunity. Okay, this is you don't get any immunity at all because your actions were outside of the force field, as it were, of protection. So now she's going to claim judicial immunity, and we're going to be asking ourselves, did her actions, were they more over here? You can just plot them here like Battleship. Or were they not immune? Were her actions over here in this bucket? Let's see what her attorneys say. They write, all right, this is the defense team, Backdoor Dugan in her defense writing this. They say, this is an extraordinary prosecution of a judge that poses a threat to federalism and judicial independence from Trump. In practical terms of American government design, consider starkly what it proposes. They said this. Oh, this is great. One morning, plainclothes federal agents with badges and baseball caps, ICE folks, sat on a bench outside a state courtroom to decide how they wanted a judge to control the courtroom and the people in and near it. Decided how they wanted a judge to control that courtroom. That's not what they did at all. The hell kind of opening sentence is this? This was like the LeBron James of lawyers. The agents decided how they wanted a judge to control the courtroom. She came outside the court. She approached them. For not doing as they wished, the judge faces now federal criminal charges. That is like totally inverting what happened. We watched the video. They were sitting outside. They didn't even go into her courtroom. She came out to them. Judges, like legislators and executive officials, are not above the law, except she is, but they do enjoy judicial immunity. That's rich, right? We're not above the law, except in this case. with deeper roots than the republic itself. Now, the Constitution also makes the federal government the supreme sovereign, Dugan's defense. The framing generation was wary of giving too much power to the federal government, we know. The prosecution is barred by judicial immunity, long rooted in common law by the 10th Amendment, saying that we have a vertical separation of power and that the court can avoid these questions by saying that this statute, okay, that the law under which she's being charged for obstructing and concealing doesn't apply to official acts of state court judges. Okay, so now you see official acts. So to our buckets, she's saying I'm clearly in this bucket. My backdoor use with this illegal is absolutely official, immune, and protected. Okay, that's where she's going with this. Now, unlike the only statute the Supreme Court has found to abrogate a judge's immunity, they weren't enacted, and so now you have to decide accordingly. Here's what she writes. Because Judge Dugan, Backdoor Dugan, rightly asserts judicial immunity and the 10th Amendment, you should not even engage in fact-finding. Don't even have a hearing on this. Just say the law doesn't apply to her. She's above the law. A bar-like immunity blocks proceedings at the outset, right? And we've talked about this with the Trump case, because if Trump has presidential immunity, and if she says she's got immunity, then it should preclude you from the entire process, right? Because the process is the penalty. You don't get immunity just after the end of the conviction, as we saw with Trump. We're like, he shouldn't even be being prosecuted here. But the judges didn't want to go through that analysis because it would have been devastating to their case, which is why Trump ultimately got convicted. And he's appealing that because Merchan didn't pause the case like Judge Chutkan did to let the Supreme Court handle the immunity issue. But the court, writes Dugan's defense, must decide whether this indictment falls within a judge's official functions at their perimeter or altogether outside the official duties and powers. Okay, 3 buckets. Didn't even know they were going to give that to us, but there it is. Only acts that are wholly or partly within the official functions get immunity, as we'll explain. She says she takes this indictment allegation at face value. Now, they're not all accurate, but you can assume them true because we want to dismiss this case. Says here, this is what they're alleging. The first count says on Good Friday, nonetheless, on a Backdoor Dugan acting like this on a Good Friday. Can you believe that? April 18th, they say Judge Dugan knowingly concealed a defendant called That Illegal, EFR, who appeared that morning in her courtroom aware that a warrant had been issued for his arrest. Now, that count offers no detail. So, okay, she concealed this dude. But the second count does. It says it's about the same guy. The count accuses her of corruptly endeavoring. They say, oh no, she wasn't corruptly endeavoring to influence, obstruct, or impede the due proper administration of the law under which, quote, a pending proceeding, which was the administrative arrest of the same man, was being had by the feds who were there. Dugan supposedly confronted ICE agents. We watched it. It's on camera. And told them falsely that they needed a judicial warrant, which they didn't. Then directed them to leave the public hallway outside her courtroom to go to the chief judge's office a few feet away, which is not a few feet away. We watched them walk it. She then addressed the defendant's case a few feet's like a yard. Off the record, while some of the agents were in the chief judge's office. Next, she directed the defendant and his lawyer out of her courtroom through a non-public jury door, her back door. Just say it. Just get it out of the way. Just call her Backdoor Judge Dugan. We all say it. Causing him to emerge into the same public hallway, right? So she led him out to bypass the agents, which she moved down the line. She finally told the defense lawyer that he could appear by Zoom for the next court date. And then she didn't even notify the prosecutor who was in the courtroom. Prosecutor was going, wait, I got my victims back here who got their heads beaten in by this lunatic. And she just continued the case and said he could show up by Zoom next time because illegal aliens in America, they get better benefits and better privileges than you. They don't have to have licenses when they get stopped by Tennessee Highway Patrol. They don't have to get investigated by the FBI when they're trafficking humans. They don't have to get arrested or served with orders of protections when they beat their spouses and threaten their kids. And then they get backdoor access to judges. Now, the day before the arraignment, Judge Dugan moved to dismiss this indictment as barred. She says, I'm above the law. I have judicial immunity. And by the allocation of power retained by the states and denied by the federal government, and she's renewing that now. She says, I have a lot of immunity. You know, judges are special. By 1607, judicial immunity would have barred this prosecution in England. Well, we're not England, so we don't care. Since at least the early 17th century, English judges have been immune. It continued up to the Civil War. In the aftermath of the Civil War, we got a bunch of amendments. There was an innovation. John Bingham, the drafter of the 14th Amendment, passed the Reconstruction Amendments, and in 1871, the Supreme Court did a bunch of other things. But the court, lots of case law here. You can just explain. You can just explain what her defense is. We don't need the book report, LeBron James lawyer. This is why, you know, this is probably pretty weak here, because we're getting a lot of copy and pasting from other areas. I want to see the application. How do you apply all of this to your backdoor client? Saying, let's continue on. Judicial power extends further. Here we go. All the way down. We're now at page 20. This case. Great. So thanks for the book report on judicial immunity. Now let's talk about Judge Backdoor Dugan's conduct. By any measure, though, her indicted conduct is within the core of a judge's official acts and immunity. Okay. Far right bucket. An illegal out the back. Here, the government prosecutes her for official acts themselves and only for her official acts. The charged acts are devoid of the self-enrichment. She's not enriching herself. Yes, she is. Politically. Or self-gratification. Yes, it is. That's what this whole thing was. She was enjoying herself too much. That marks earlier cases in which judges were convicted for using judicial status as leverage. Like, she didn't get a kickback. She didn't get a bribe. She didn't get a favor. She didn't do another crime. She got the enjoyment of fighting Trump's ICE people, which is plenty for them. And they did not trench on any other rights. Now, on the indictment's own terms, Backdoor Dugan's defense says, her every action related to a pending case. Okay, see, so you have to get very granular here. Every action related to a pending case assigned to her branch while she was on duty, and she had her robe on. So like, she was on the clock and she had a robe. Every action concerned the people that were scheduled to appear before her that morning. She sought to ascertain what legal authority, if any, federal agents had to snatch from that courthouse a defendant with an active criminal case in her branch. Those agents were outside her courtroom. They acknowledge that. They never went in the court. They're in a public hallway outside your courtroom. You have no power there. In the public hallway near the doors, admitted by her defense, because it's true. Her acts concerned directing some of the agents to the chief judge, who by appointment of the state Supreme Court had the greatest administrative authority over the whole courthouse, right? She was distracting them and moving them out. Now, the indictment describes actions concerning how and when the judge handled a defendant's appearance in court within the parameters of her morning docket and calendar. So this is pretty interesting. It's like, if it's on the docket and she's inside her courtroom and she's in a robe, she could do whatever she wants. She could do lines of coke with this dude if they wanted to. Her actions concerned what flexibility she would allow for him for future appearances. Or they concerned which courtroom door he would use to emerge into the public hallway. That's all. It had no ulterior motive. It was just more convenient for him. Through the doors at the end of the courtroom's aisle, or instead at most 15 feet away through the side door beside just one of the courtroom's interior walls. So maybe they couldn't do coke because that doesn't necessarily pertain to the future case, but because she was managing the caseload and essentially, the prosecutor should be very upset about this because he got his case kind of stolen from him without having his input that day of the hearing. The judge just vacated it without him knowing. So all of these things, right, are causing harm to other people in the courtroom who also have rights. Like, the victims are there. They want to be heard. They're there because they got their heads beat in. So the judge is not, it's not just like her managing her private docket, in other words. It's not like the court's not in session. There's no other parties there who have rights. The state government has a right to be there and be heard on this. So there's other parties involved. In other words, like, she's not like, I'm sick this morning. Okay, sometimes judges are sick. They wake up, I'm sick, I can't come into court. Docket's scheduled, everything gets continued, or another judge will fill in or whatever, right? So if something like that happens, you might say that is within her discretion, but there were 3 victims there, or 2 victims there, plus the victim's advocate and the prosecutor all in the courtroom. So it's not just like she's managing his future appearances. There was a scheduled hearing on that date. Maybe the victims wanted to say something. That's why they're there. The indictment includes no hint of self-dealing. Well, it is her enthusiasm for being a judicial insurrectionist, okay? And that is satisfactory enough for her. Now, it includes no hint of bribery, extortion, kickbacks, tax evasion, stealing, assault, or other extrajudicial misconduct. No hint of unlawful coercion, threat, or thuggery. I would disagree with that. No hint, in fact, of any ultra-virus exercise of ordinary judicial power. I would say yes. I would say it is ultra-virus. The prosecutor didn't get a say in it. It was an ex parte action, essentially. It was an ex parte continuance that was violative of the victim's rights and the government's rights. It was ultra-virus that they had no say. In her courtroom, they were all there. And she just moved it. Although the first count echoes the statute's reference to concealment, nothing in the indictment suggests actual concealment of anyone or anything. You put him in the back door. In sum, nothing in this indictment sounds like a claim like unofficial acts and extrajudicial self-dealing that have sent them, other judges, to face federal trials, criminal trials. And I think that's probably true. Like, I think other judges were doing bad things too, but this is just a different bad thing. Like, she wasn't, I don't know, maybe there's more to it. Bribery, extortion, kickbacks or something. I don't know. Maybe she's friends with the defense team. I think that maybe she just kind of saw herself in him. I think there's a kind of a resemblance there. You know, this is the guy here. She's like, gosh, I just see a lot in him. She's inspired by him and empathized with him and wanted him to do well. And she's like, gosh, we're like almost like twins almost. So, you know, was very animated about this. And that was satisfactory enough. That was very satisfying to her. Now, most importantly, the indictment says nothing within the scope to which Congress could have eliminated judicial immunity for her. Nothing in the indictment says that she violated any individual's constitutional rights, not even close. The indictment didn't allege it, but she did it in the courtroom. There were victims who were there. And the federal government itself has no right to get rid of judicial immunity. And so to the contrary, they say the Supreme Court has granted her immunity. All that the federal government has indicted her only for doing what judges may do as a matter of official acts, right? Her defense is, he used a door in my courtroom. He's allowed to use doors in my courtroom. We continued his case because I'm a judge and I can manage my calendar. It's an official act. Everything that she did was allowed. Now, usually when lawyers or judges speak of the separation of powers, they refer to the allegation of core duties, and there's another separation of powers. Again, a lot of legalese here. Here, the Constitution's vertical separations of power means that the court must assess whether the federal government can actually exact criminal charges from Dugan for doing in and near her state courtroom as the indictment contends. That's the core question here under the 10th Amendment. And the government, they say, cannot prove this. The Supreme Court sustained someone else's claim of immunity in this case, a bunch of other cases. And this is just like that. They say this case is just the ordinary work of a state court. It's unlike anything strange in other cases that's illegal. She had authority and control. She's a duly elected judge. And if you got a problem, hit her with an ethics complaint. But don't charge her with a crime. Other cases are much worse than this, and she's not that bad. This case is not akin to other things. And the federal government is trying to punish her, but the 10th Amendment says they can't do that. So you have a duty to dismiss this case. The correct time, dismiss it now. And it's hilarious. They keep referencing the Trump Supreme Court case, which is great. For that matter, even if hypothetically the government could point here to an unofficial act, it could not use as evidence some other case. And so there's a constitutional avoidance doctrine, which is wild they would invoke this. Although Dugan says she has immunity, you shouldn't test it because we should owe a deference to branches of government, saying this indictment breaks new ground. Dismissing it will not. For a long time, judges have had judicial immunity, and Backdoor Dugan deserves the same. So do the limits of federal power and saying this court should dismiss the indictment signed by the defense attorney for Backdoor Dugan, Dean A. Strang. And, I think that it's a defense. I think if you get a friendly jury in Wisconsin, they might buy that defense. Oh, it was her courtroom. But I think the video, when you watch the video and you see what her intention was, like you can splice her case up, right? And go through each action. And all of the actions outside the courtroom, the walking them over, the continuation of the case, the violation of the victim's rights, the not even talking to the prosecutor about this. And by the way, Dugan got busted by everybody in her courtroom who knew what was going on. Even the security guy, sounds like, went out and warned the ICE agents. So like every single witness who's going to come in here, all the ICE agents will testify. We know what she was doing. They may even want to subpoena the administrative judge. What were they saying to you? Tell us about your conversation. And even the security guy, right, was there, warned them. He's going to come in and testify. Everyone's going to know she's whispering. She continued the case. She had an interest in stopping Trump, just like the rest of the libs who think it's okay to break the law, to do whatever they want to do. Now her defense team is putting together what they can put together, but we know what she did. She knows what she did. The fact that they're going to try to say this is an official act, which is in this protected bucket, is going to be a fun battle. We're going to keep our eye on it with Backdoor Dugan out of Wisconsin. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, my beautiful friends, what a stream it has been. So if you're just joining us, 2 updates today. We went deep on the Supreme Court latest, which is now saying TPS status is canceled again. And a stay is in effect, 7-2 decision. Ketanji, very unhappy about this. The court has botched this assessment. All right, we read through it. We also heard from Stephen Miller, read a great reply from Kristi Noem that led to the good ruling from the Supreme Court, and had a nice victory in SCOTUS. Then we talked about Backdoor Dugan, reminded ourselves about the 3 buckets, and saw that she is now attempting to dismiss her case because she says she's above the law. Now, it's time to hear from you. Before we do, quick reminder, tomorrow, we're coming back here Saturday, Eric's house, not on this channel. Go register if you'd like to join us. 2 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to be doing a virtual tour. We're going to learn about hope, healing, and the amazing things that Eric's house does. If you know somebody who's lost somebody recently or not so recently, suicide, overdose, tragic death, someone who is in pain, someone who's grieving, and you want to help them or learn more about it, come join us. Eric's house tomorrow. Your boy will be there with Mama G, Greg, Maddie, and we hope to see you. We hope to meet you. Hope to see you on the screen and learn a little bit more about your story and all the things. So come join us, 11 a.m. Arizona. Thanks for joining us and supporting Eric's house because they're amazing people and we want to help other people heal. All right, so my friends, thank you for sending in these amazing donos and super chats. You're incredible. We appreciate your support of our work here. I see Sheila Pooh's bringing in membos. We got Donut, John, Carrie B, K Bean clipping for us all day. You guys are amazing. And here is where we're starting. Yes, indeed. Boom. It's time to do the Friday dance, which is Snoopy having a good Friday. Happy Friday, my friends. Hopefully you've got some amazing weekend plans. Hey, James Rich. James, thank you, man, for joining up and sending some love in here as a new member. James Rich in the house. Mouse C also became a supporter. Great to see you, Mouse C. We had a great members only stream this morning. It was a long one. I think we did. The members only stream, I think, was longer than the show today because we were just riffing this morning, man. We were just chatting away. So check out the morning stream as well. Hey, Jason on Blast. Jason, what a nice guy. People think Jason's a scary person because of this mask. He's a nice guy. He's bringing in 10 membos. John Zimmerman. Andrea Goff is here. Darkborn, what's up? Green Caps Lock. And Black Thunder. What's going on? NPD. We have Donald Jeff Olson, Tiffan, Donna Smith, and Kathy Gilbert, courtesy of Jason on Blast in the house. A nice guy. Hey, Rob, what's up? No immunity from criminal activity, judge. Well, she says she has immunity. We'll see what the courts say. Waldo, what's up? Eclectic Deb is gifted a membo, courtesy of Waldo. Thank you, Waldo. Welcome aboard, Eclectic Deb. Economath says, my more detailed write-up of Flores Ruiz's privilege from the civil arrest that Dugan was protecting is posted to the Watching the Watchers locals page. Oh, I see. So Economath's argument is that, and I think this is an interesting argument, that the illegal was on the way to court, and so he should not have been arrested, right? You have privileges, like they give you some grace if you're going to go to the court system, so you don't get arrested at the court system. So he's saying that applies to this illegal, and that Dugan was essentially offering a protection of others and invoking that protection on his behalf. And so that would, I guess, afford her. I think the probably where the argument breaks down is that she could have done that legally, right? She can't break the law in order to protect that privilege. So she could have filed something or gotten a lawyer or filed something with the federal judge who granted the arrest warrant. But I don't think that she could have broken the law if she objected to that. But it sounds like it's a great read. So thank you for sharing it on our locals page at the Virginian. Thank you, Economath. And I may have botched your argument. I think that's what I remember you saying. Hey, let's go, Brandon. 24 months as a membo. Great to see you, let's go, Brandon. Rob, you know $0 in child support is unacceptable. I put it in the mail. I swear it's coming. You're going to get it. Just check your mailbox. Mizzy M. Hey, Eat at Anton's rated the stream over on Twitch. Great to see you, Eat at Anton's. Thanks for rating us. Mizzy M, what's up? Happy Friday, everyone. Mizzy M, happy Friday to you, Mizzy M. Hopefully you're doing something great. Joy K says, love your tenacity. Well, thank you, Joy K. Is it tenacity? I think it might just be rage. I don't know what it is. It's one or the other. Hey, Lenny Malley, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you, Lenny. Share this everywhere. Share this to every person you've ever met. Repeatedly, aggressively. Joy K, hey, looking forward to listening to Watching the Watchers. We got two songs today. We have a great new song that is more like an opening song, but I'm not real sure on opening songs because I think it might, kind of irritate people at the opening. But I'll see what you guys think about it. So you let me know what you think about the opening song. It's a great song, but I'm not sure about an opening song. But it's a great song, and we might do it. Depends on what you say about it. So we'll listen to it here coming up in a minute, courtesy of our friend Jonah Finn over at watcherlodge.com. And we'll listen to our regular song on the way out. We got two songs coming up before. It's Friday, baby. What's up, Joy K? Hey, looking forward to it. Hey, thank you, Joy K. I dig the songs. Keith Goldfisher. What's up, Keith? Thanks for becoming a membo and joining up. We'll see you tomorrow in the morning. The Babylon Bee says, Elon Musk leaves job of making government more efficient for the much easier job of sending humans to Mars. Yeah, that's hilarious. He's like, this Congress is so freaking screwed. I'm just going to go build my own Congress on Mars, which he's doing. It sounds like it's going to probably be much better. Rob, Oregon, statewide Jural Assembly, Article 3, Amendment 7, Civilian Common Law Court of Record. We are the one Supreme Court on Oregon claiming original jurisdiction and whose verdict has no appeal. From Rob. Bill Dozer says, these judicial back and forths are giving me whiplash. Why can't they just adhere to the Constitution from the start? Well, it's because they hate that Constitution. Because it impedes their sense of social justice in America. Thank you, Bill. Yeah, and that trade one was fun. And we were kind of slow on the trade, right? The trade one. We kind of waited because I had a feeling. I'm like, all right, I don't know, something's going to go on this one. And yeah, we came back that afternoon and it was great. Like, timed that one. We got lucky on the timing on that one. Little Joe, Hey, Rob, love your show. You've been my nightly workout program intelligence brief since at least a year before you did the name change. Whoa, Little Joe. That's a long time, man. Yeah, that was like 2022, I think. Is that when that was? Man, that's awesome. Shout out. Thanks for hanging with us while you're working out. I love listening to stuff while I'm working out too. So I always appreciate it. I'm like, thank you. It's a nice lift today. Thank you for this. Appreciate that. So thank you, Little Joe. It's an honor and a privilege to be working out with you. But you should probably add 5 pounds to both sides. All right. Thank you, Sheila the Pooh. Hey, Sheila the Pooh, bringing in 10 more membos. What's up? Walter, Sheila, bringing in Walter Wajikula. We got Hillbilly in the Asia joining us. Kenny Borsarge. What's up, iChurch Cafe? Welcome. Mike Long, Unsound Engineer. Matt G, the Shatner Turbo 2000. What's up? Brian Van Cleve. What's up, Lauren? And C. White, gifted membos. Courtesy of Sheila Pooh. A million hugs to you. Thank you, Sheila, for bringing them in. This one from Milo Phone Bill says, okay, so when Romero Hernandez, the gay guy from Venezuela looking for his dream job, who was deported from Texas and came back in via Biden's app, was never vetted coming in on his second attempt, despite the fact he has a deportation order. Yeah, I don't know what the status was. When we read that reply on this Milo Phone Bill, I kind of noticed an inconsistency. I didn't mention it at the time, but something I didn't understand exactly. Like, they were making the point that Mayorkas was supposed to vet these people on the way in. And logically, it makes sense, and they explained it as to why. But then later in the filing, it sounds like they came back out and said that he didn't vet anybody. Like, they were unvetted, unchecked, and they just came in because they just Ubered in. So, like, the true extent of the invasion and the vetting, I think, is unknown at the moment. But it sounds like it was a disaster. Hey, what's up, Bill Dozer? Says, Ketanji is a mythical troll creature that crept out from a bridge to spout nonsense. Biden saw an opportunity to nominate the most diverse SCOTUS justice and leapt hobbled over to action. Yeah, she's a special Supreme Court judge, no doubt about it. Her talk time is like twice of everybody else. It's really obnoxious. Spuds, is Ketanji Jackson willing to take the blame for all the illegals that have abused and arred and eliminated? You know, those are pretty harmful actions. Well, I guess nobody she knows or cares about has been hurt by illegal immigration, so she doesn't care. American citizens, she sure sounds like an accessory to a crime to me. What's going on, Spuds? Pinochet helicopter tours. Says, would be a shame if the FRIIIDAY people turned around and took out their deportation frustrations on the Democrats, who invited them in, but didn't secure their lawful status. Yeah, and you would imagine that there would be repercussions for the Democrats for that, but I think they're probably just going to blame Trump. Yeah, what's up, Knox? Hey, TGIF all. I was a volunteer ACLU attorney in the early 90s. The A stands for American, and the focus was always on free speech. How did they become immigration law? Defending non-citizens in immigration matters. I have no idea. Yeah, no idea. I thought there was a free speech organization when I was a boy. But it's a disaster. Yeah, I think they should have $0, any federal dollars, and even states that give them money should, be cut off from getting their money that goes to them, anything that's earmarked. ACLU is a disaster. They should lose all interfacing privileges if they haven't already. Sheila Pooh, the 500,000 people can go stay with Ketanji then. She can invite them in their spare bedroom. Let her put them up and figure out how much that harm costs them. Would cost us. Thank you, Sheila Pooh. King of Biltong, get your biltong from the King of Biltong. And I think it's Biltong USA. Yeah, check it out. Chubby, hey, claiming that all 500,000 have functional adult brains is a very bold claim. I know I might have overshot that. Let's say we expect them to have functional adult brains, but they might be Democrats, so who knows? Rick! Thank you, Rick. 5 membos coming in. Delta, Brian Mack. What's up, Brian? Steven Seagal, PhD, is here. John Susie in the house. Custom Costumes, all gifted membos, courtesy of Rick D in the house. Thank you, Rick, for bringing in 5 new membos. Hey, Pinochet's helicopter tours. Thank Dick Durbin for forcing ethics on the Supreme Court. All Harvard judges must recuse themselves from any case involving Harvard or its corruption. And that's, yeah, there's like 3 or 4 people on there, right, from Harvard. Half the court going to have to recuse. Stephen Frazier. What's up, Stephen? Thank you, Stephen, for joining up. Great to have you. Grab the member stream from this morning. We had a good one. This morning we talked about the spy who was busted at the Defense Intelligence Agency. It was a good read, man. That was crazy. He was writing notes down on paper and stuffing them in his socks. It was kind of like a spy novel. Chat with me says granting to stay would facilitate needless human suffering, but it won't facilitate needless human suffering of U.S. citizens. Balance weighs in favor of the aliens. If the aliens are more important than the citizens, let the aliens be the tax base and not the citizens. No. We have to pay for us and them. Understand? Because this is America, land of the free. Economath says the federal agents didn't have to go into the courtroom for the argument to work. Their mere presence outside had effects that spilled into the courtroom. That's a pretty broad reading there, Economath. I think I haven't dug into that particular issue, but I'm curious about it. We'll see what happens. She knows what she did. I think a jury will know what she did. We'll see what the judge says, though. Hey, what's up? Andrew Humans. Judges get a lot of protections, right? The judiciary kind of protects their own. We might run into like a real question about this because the judges might all, just like they're issuing stays against Trump completely unconstitutionally. Maybe they do the same thing with this judge. We'll see. Or maybe it's constitutional. We'll see what Economist says. Andrew Humans. Why doesn't anyone talk about the obvious ex-parte communication between Judge Dookie and the defendant? Yeah, I think we kind of hit that. And I don't know when you sent that one in, but at some point, and I did not see your comment, but I did make that point about the ex-parte communication in terms of the continuance of the case. It sounds like she did talk to the lawyer too, right? At some point, maybe outside, maybe that's what you're referencing, but they continued the case and the prosecutor was not aware of that. And the victim was also in the courtroom. How did they not have any say in that? They were there for the hearing. Great comment, Andrew. Steel Manning, what if Kristi Noem used an auto pen for 532,000 deportation orders? I guess they're all valid. No one can challenge it at all. They should just have those going all day. Here you go. Just Xeroxing those things off, baby. King of Biltong. You know where to go. BiltongUSA.com. King of Biltong. Thanks for sending in the super chat. And you can use code Robert for 10% off. Brenda Tigay says, here's the score. Stephen Miller, 1276 is the scoreboard. Rude, CNN host equals 0. And I apparently can't remember their names either. Brenda, thanks for being here for 15 months as a member. You're amazing. We appreciate that. Coming up on 2 full babies. Hey, Doom Bunny of Doom says, are they arguing that she has immunity because of evading ICE? She was assuring his next appearance. I don't think that's exact. I don't think so. I think the assurance of the next appearance was another judicial act, but the using of the door and the communications were happening inside her courtroom. So that's, I think, more of the argument. Now, the securing of the next appearance by Zoom is, I would say, indicia of her mental state to say that she does not want to force him to come back, because if he comes back, ICE might come pick him up again. So it's just another indicator that she's trying to avoid him getting arrested. Rick D. Hey, Rob, not sure you saw my post from this morning. I don't think not on this. Catherine, I think I did. You sent it in as we were wrapping the stream up, right? Thank you for sending it again. Katherine Johnson was the human computer who did the math for the Mercury launches. She literally figured out the math by hand. I think I've seen a picture of her. Long past due having a spacecraft named for her. I think I remember reading about her in a Wikipedia article one time. Very smart person. What's up, Chubby? Wouldn't old backdoor Judge Dugan exhilarating the illegal via the jury exit without consulting the prosecution as required for a fair trial effectively invalidate her claims to it being part of her official acts? Yeah, I think if you say it's an ex parte communication, then that would not be official because she should not be doing that. So she can't claim immunity based on that non-official act. Economath. Page is a case in my write-up on Flores Ruiz's privilege from civil arrest argument. I called it. Let's go from Economath. Great job, Economath. You're on it, man. Digging in. Good stuff. Thank you for sharing it with us so we can learn about it. Pinochet, a judge in Massachusetts, did the exact same thing as this whale did. Biden allowed her to resign, but at least she will never be a judge here ever again. Thank you for that. I did not know that, Pinochet. Sheila Poo, 10 more membos coming in. Grad in Adine in the house. Imperious is coming in. Papa Flippin' Smurf, James Moore, and Robert Taylor. Gifted membos courtesy of Sheila the Poo. 1,000,000 hugs to you. Thank you for that. 1,000,000 hugs to you, Sheila the Poo. Hey, Chubby says, comparing Backdoor Dugan's case of immunity to Trump's just shows her narcissism. Also, isn't the claim of the courts being a co-equal branch a fallacy? Yeah, it kind of depends who you ask. I don't remember seeing that claim made in the Constitution, but I will admit it's been a while since I read through it. Yeah, I don't think that they say in the Constitution, co-equal branch or anything like that, but they also don't really prioritize them. I mean, they do prioritize them in terms of the articles, right? Legislative, executive, judiciary, Article 1, Article 2, Article 3. So people might argue that the legislature is the legislative branch is the most important just by the numbering. But I think the real analysis comes down to the checks and balances. Like what powers do they have, literally? Like the court has judicial review, and they made that up themselves with a conflicted Judge Marshall who should have recused himself from that case and would have recused himself from a case like that by today's standards. But anyways, they gave themselves that power. But other than that, they don't have much else. So if you want to say that they're co-equal to the executive branch, they don't really have an army, so they're not that co-equal, you know what I'm saying? But practically, we have this legal fiction. We say, well, it's like these 3 checks and balances, and we kind of owe them respect. It would be nice to afford the court some respect if they acted respectfully. Thank you for the comment. Hey, Lydia Erickson, more membos coming in courtesy of Sheila, Chris Nelson, Natasha, Matt Ellis, and Tishku. Gifted membos courtesy of Sheila Poo. 1,000,000 hugs to you. Hey, J-Man. Wait, so how would the Supreme Court TPS decision affect DACA recipients created under the Obama executive order? Great question. And I'm sure that's a whole separate area of law. I think temporary protected status is much more temporary than DACA. Deferred action, you might say, I'm not sure what the status is on DACA at the current moment. But I think Trump fought that and lost that the last administration, if I remember right. But I don't know what the status is currently. Thank you, J-Man. Economath, did everyone remember to put the cover sheet on their TPS reports? If not, we'll get you a copy of the memo. And that's from Office Space. Thank you, Economath. Hey, Jerry Swoboda. Thank you, Jerry, for the nice dono. What a nice pair. Thank you for that one, Jerry. We appreciate you. Thank you for being a membo and joining us. Chris Wolney says Dean Strang was great in the Making a Murderer Stephen Avery case, but sounds like his arguments are really reaching in this one. Did he do Making a Murderer case? Interesting. So that's the same attorney. He's got to work with Backdoor Dugan. I mean, he's not, Dean Strang, there he is. Only so much you can do with that, Judge. Rick D. Hey, wish I could be there for Eric's house tomorrow. I lost my son when he was 17, accident. Yeah. Luckily, I had those I could talk to and work through it with. Was 18 years ago today. When you lose someone that way, you get help from those who have some idea of what it means. You do great work with that, Rob, Mama, and all involved. Man, Rick, I'm so sorry to hear that. I did not know that about you. Rest in peace to your boy. He's up there in heaven with my bro, hanging out, looking down on us, probably talking smack every now and then. But you're absolutely right about that. When I lost my bro, man, I didn't know what to do about it. Neither did my mom. It's like everybody, as people are dying, or like when you're in addiction, like yours was an accident. So yours is a loss. It's just like, man, just, oh my gosh. But once people die, like when kids are like suicidal or something, they'll, give them treatment and rehab and therapy and all those things. But once someone dies, it's like, wow. And with when it's a kid or a child, when it's suicide or an accident, there's kind of a different level to that because people will judge you. They'll say, oh, your brother died by suicide. Oh, why? Because he's an addict. Oh, because you're a bad brother and you're a bad mother and you're a bad father for letting that happen and all these things. Or people just don't know how to talk to you, which has really been more the experience, right, that I've had. I haven't not had anybody make those judgments to me, directly, but you ask yourselves those questions. Could I have saved him? There were many interactions with my brother where I could have acted differently. Could that have changed the course of the future? I don't know. So you got to grapple with those issues and grapple with that guilt. And it can turn into some very problematic things. For me, I was drinking myself to death. So the idea is we want to prevent that from happening, because when people lose somebody, it just is like they lose it, and people, friends, family might help, but a lot of friends don't know how to talk to you. It's a really tough thing. So Eric's house is set up for that. It's for accidents, overdose, tragic deaths. It is happening all around us in our country. We'd love to be able to help and share. I'm going to talk about my experience tomorrow. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Rick, I'm sorry you can't make it. We'll record it, man. So if you want to check it out, I'm really glad that you found some peace and healing in the aftermath of that. We'll be reunited with our family again, but not yet, Rick. Thank you for the nice comment. Deborah, you're amazing. 5 membos coming in. Thank you, Deborah. In Yo Base is here. What's up, OGD Dog? We got Socially Inept Clown Prince Chaos. Gifted membos. BC is here, and Kevon, gifted membos. Thank you for doing that, Deborah Myers. We appreciate you. Hey, Cardinal O'Flanagan says, could they remove Dugan from the bench? But she keeps her salary, right? So no harm. Oh, yeah, she's still getting paid. Yeah. Probably having a nice time over there. Ordering DoorDash all day. John McGarvey says, you're not going to lose me, but there are shows that I don't watch because of the intro music, even though I enjoy their content. Just my 2 cents. And with inflation, it's only worth 7/10 of a cent. Oh, well, I'm used to that. Yeah. Nothing is worth what it was once before. But yeah, I kind of agree with that. I don't generally like intro music. Like, let's just get right to it, But maybe in certain circumstances, or maybe for Membo streams, or maybe something like that. Anyways, not to detract from the amazing song we're about to listen to. Economath. For anyone looking for the write-up, I posted it to Watching the Watchers about a week ago, and the privilege argument applies in the courtroom, courthouse, and going to and from. So I guess the other distinction is, if the privilege applies to the illegal alien, you're saying that Dugan, as the judge, can kind of put that over her. Like, that privilege extends to her because she has some authority to act as his caretaker or something. Like, how does that connection happen? I got to read your article. Rel, what's Relantel? Bringing in 5 membos. Watson coming in. A. Watson. Thank you, Watson. Relantel for bringing in A. Watson. Cheryl Sneed Gebby. What's up, Cheryl? Pearls Pink, Kevin McGee, and A. Baker. Gifted membos, courtesy of Relantel in the house. Thank you, Relantel. ELZ. Hey, Rob, yet another week of winning. Yeah, it was good. I was a little nervous after that trade order, but we got it. So, hey, I personally find your energy inspirational. ELZ, thank you for that, brother. Honestly, I am energized by you. So, I'm inspired too. So, as always on Friday, $7 for good luck to you and all the watchers. Thank you, ELZ. You're amazing. It really is true. Like, I get energized by you, by your comments, by the work we're doing here. So thank you for doing that and for being here, being a part of our community. We appreciate you. Andrew Yeomans says, it was about 5 minutes before you mentioned it, and it's pronounced Yeomans, but everyone gets it wrong. All right, sorry about that. It looks like you, yeah. But it's Yeomans. All right, well, I swear I didn't see your comment before I made that point. But it was a good point. No one believes me anyways. Rick D. Dugan is not a federal judge, so the Article 3 does not apply to her in equal branch argument. So maybe like for the 10th Amendment stuff is your point, Rick D? Good to see you, Rick D. Yeah, I'm excited to follow this argument. It's going to be fun. Rick D. Brian was a free climber, got stuck where he couldn't go forward or back and fell 100 feet. Oh my gosh, Rick. Rest in peace to your boy. Man, what an adventurer, huh? Ugh. Rick, we pray for you, my man, and for your boy. We appreciate that. Thank you for telling us that, man, and for sharing that with us. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's not an easy thing to do. You're amazing. Hey, Kissa. What is this? Great follow-up comment to Rick's comment. Kissa, my ASS, member for 2 months, says Trump admin needs to call out cultural Marxism. I think, yeah, that's true. Because the Marxists are everywhere. They're everywhere. They just put different labels on themselves. Like Green New Energy or whatever. But we know. They're just communists. Hey, B. Torn is here. Is this a different song? Oh, no, it's Jonah Finn. We might have another song, too. Jonah Finn, is this you? Hey, says, hey, thanks for playing my revamping of your closer on today's show. Had fun testing out Suno. It's addicting. So much so there's 8 more remixes in more of a metal rock vein. Listen loudly at your leisure. Everyone else check them out. It helps the Suno channel. So Suno is how he made the song. And Be Torn is Jonah. Awesome. All right, we're going to listen to it here in a minute. So we're going to get there. We're going to get there very soon. Thank you for sharing it, Be Torn. Fred, Rob, I think you missed the ending of Jackson's statement, the Latin phrase, et stultus sum. Was that in there? I didn't see it. What does that mean? Yeah, okay. TJ King says, okay, yeah, so backdoor Judge Dugan can order the bailiff to assassinate ICE agents in the public hallway near her courtroom as an official act. Yeah, amuse, funny. Yeah, she can assassinate someone with SEAL Team 6. That's funny. I wish I would have thought of that one. Amuse, hilarious. Yeah, Dugan, she's got judicial immunity. She can just assassinate everybody with SEAL Team 6. Where's Jamie Raskin screaming about that on CNN? Hey, let's see. Alvy Baby says, you know what scares me is that you couldn't read that brief, point out the law clear as a bell, and you still have 2 Supreme Court justices who vote against the stay. I just don't get it. Yeah, right. So in other words, the Kristi Noem's reply, it's like, it's black and white right here. Like discretion, non-reviewable. The law Congress wrote, it's here for 50 times. Judges still say, Ketanji, I don't like it. It's going to be a lot of people. Blah, blah, blah. All right. So my friends, thank you for sending in those amazing donos and all of your tremendous support. Knox is right, man. I am so very sorry for everyone's losses. So many souls who are dearly missed. And you don't have to be in pain, or the people around you who are in pain. If you maybe you don't know how to talk to somebody who's going through this. Come join us tomorrow. We'll talk about it. We'll explain how, what we do and how it works. And more. Hey, Starship Poopers here. Says, OMG, I start dancing when I hear the intro outro music for the All In podcast of NASA spaceflight bids on YouTube. Don't discount the value of your music branding for your channel. When a video just dead ends into dead air, it seems incomplete. Just saying, Holmes. So I'm with you on that. Like the outro music, I'm down for. Because then if you don't like it, you can just leave, right? You just, all right, I'm out. I can just end the show. But if it's intro, you kind of got to sit through it. So I agree on the outro. Like the outro, I think we'll keep and probably change, update, do a whole album, rock out, all the things. So I appreciate that, Starship Pooper. It's very good feedback. Okay, so speaking of the song, let's listen to this. All right, so this came out from Jonah Finn. This is a 2-minuter. If you don't want to listen to it, the show is now going to be essentially over. So we're going to listen to this. We'll take a little feedback, and then we'll wrap it up with our spotlight, and then we'll get the main show. But if you want to check out, here is the song that came out from Jonah Finn. And if you want to listen to this, it's over at watcherlodge.com. Jonah, thank you for doing this for us. Here it is.
Welcome to you all, my beautiful friends. It's that time to shine that big, beautiful spotlight brightly again. We're gonna bring the heat, we will not accept defeat. Together we'll expose corruption one more time. We'll dive into the truth behind everything the media hides. Expose their lies with the receipts on our side. The fight is not over, but we'll make them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth is on our side. Watching the watchers, we won't be denied. Watching the watchers. Eyes open wide, fighting for freedom, leaving them nowhere to hide. Hit the thumbs up, don't forget to hit share. And invite your friends who want this fight to just be fair. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news, but here we see through the script and rules. Together we will be watching the watchers, shining the light. Watching the watchers, defending what's right. Watching the watchers, every day, every night. Together in liberty and justice for all, we must hold the line and answer the call. Together we must stay vigilant to remain free. To do it we must always keep watching the watchers. Watching the watchers. Let's start the show.
Woo, baby! Amazing. So that would be how we would start the show, but we'll continue to play around with the idea of intro tunes, but we definitely are going to have the outro tune. So we're going to wrap it up right there, my friends. It has been a beautiful stream. Thanks again to Jonah Finn for writing that for us and for creating the anthem. The idea is we want to create energy around the work that we're doing here. And so, Jonah, thanks for taking the time to do that. I loved it. I hope you enjoyed it. And we'll continue to play around and have some fun with some of this stuff. But my friends, it has been an absolutely outstanding week. Thank you for being here and joining us as we've covered all of this litigation and more. We've had some good news this week. We're going to have a lot more to come. And so we'll pause here for the evening. Membos, we'll be back tomorrow on our Saturday stream. Thanks for being a membo. We also have Eric's House tomorrow, so mark your calendars if you'd like to join us. It's going to be inspirational and fun. But we'll pause here for the weekend. Of course, I hope that you're out there doing something fun, exciting, interesting, spending time with friends, family, the people that we love, the reason we do it all, and that you restore, recover, rejuvenate, because we're back on Monday. We're going to be ready to go, baby. We need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful weekend, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here on Monday. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. We brought the heat with every chat and line. Together we expose corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Watching the watchers, we won't be denied. Watching the watchers, eyes open nothing to hide. So drop a like and don't forget to share, and bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news.